Okay, so I'm going to try to do this. I'm going to try to do this this video on stance, and I'll try to demonstrate both the stances for you. You know, if you want to know the ins and outs and the philosophy of the stance and why it's important when it comes to mitigating recoil and shooting your handguns, you can check out the podcast that just released this morning. You can find it anywhere that you can find podcasts, Spotify, any of those places. Check it out and listen. Now, I'm going to try to demonstrate this the best that I can. Being kind of relatively new to video, I'm doing this myself, and I know you can't see my feet or my legs, so I'll try to talk about kind of what they're doing and kind of where you should position them. So I'll give this a stab and we'll see how it works, and then I'll post it, and then it is what it is at that point. I'm sure everyone understands the stance anyhow, but I'm going to go ahead and go over it. So the first stance we're going to talk about is the isosceles stance. So you're going to be squared up to the target. So the target's like right in front of me, okay? And I'm squared up. My body, my shoulders, we're squared up to the target. Now, my feet, since you can't see them, right? They'll never be together like this. You never want to stand with your feet together. You always want to have them shoulder width apart, so they're under the shoulder. You do this so you can have a nice base to shoot from. You want to be, well balanced. Now, I also want to be able to do what? Shoot and move to the left, shoot and move to the right, that kind of stuff. So feet shoulder width apart. I want to stay loose in my knees. I want the weight on the balls of my feet like I'm getting ready to take off for a race. I am going to take the firearm, and instead of driving it out and dropping down to it like this, I'm going to take the firearm, I'm going to bring it up to my line of sight, and I'm going to drive it out. Right up to my line of sight, and I'm going to drive it out. Now, just so you can kind of see how that's going to look, I want you to drive your arms all the way out, lock them out, and then release them just a little bit. You don't need to drive them out and keep them locked. Lock it and release just a little bit. So when you shoot, you want to be able to mitigate that recoil. And with them being unlocked, you're able to kind of manage that recoil. Where if they're locked, that recoil is going to do nothing but push you. You want to be able to stabilize and manage that recoil, okay? Kind of absorb it, kind of work with it. So once again, our feet are shoulder width apart. Our knees are kind of loose. They're not locked out. They're kind of loose. The weight is on the balls of our feet like you're getting ready to take off. Take that firearm, you're going to drive it all the way, bring it up to your line of sight. You're going to drive it out. You're going to let off your arms just a little bit. Now, I'm going to lean sideways here so you can hopefully see what I got going on. Drive it out, and then you're going to bend at the waist. You're going to bend at the waist. And I guess to be blunt, your hips are going to go back and your shoulders are going to go forward. So yeah, you're kind of sticking your butt out, I guess, if that's the way you want to say it. And as I do that, my knees are going to bend to do what? My knees are going to bend so I can manage my balance. I can manage the stability of my stance. And my knees are going to bend differently for me than for you, than for someone else. So drive that gun out, and I'm going to stick my hips back, and I'm going to bend forward at the waist. And this is the way it's going to look for me. Now your shoulders, you don't necessarily want to lock your shoulders all the way out. You want to set your shoulders kind of back down and in. And that's going to help you mitigate the recoil. And in this stance, being isosceles stance, you can go back and forth, right or left, kind of just like a turret on a tank. So that is the isosceles stance. The next stance is going to be the Weaver stance. And if you shoot a lot of shotguns or you shoot a lot of rifles, the Weaver stance is just going to be just like the stance you use to shoot those. So instead of being squared up to the target, I'm going to be semi-bladed. So if I'm right-handed, my right leg's going to go back. My left leg's going to come forward. I'm not going to lean back. I'm not going to lean forward. I'm going to stand straight up. I'm going to pick up the firearm, bring it up just like this. This hand's going to come up in that grip that we discussed before. And this arm's going to be bent at a 45. And this is going to be your Weaver stance. There is a lot of people that shoot really well on that stance. And a lot of times it's because it is the most natural, defensive stance. You're never going to get into a fight like this. You're probably going to get into a fight like this. This is going to be the natural fighting defensive stance. And so this works for a lot of people. When I am standing at a table, on a firing line, just shooting at targets, I will use the isosceles. That's the way I do it, okay? Kind of modify it a little bit, and you'll kind of figure that out as you progress and as you move along in your shooting journey. But this is what I do when I'm at the firing line. Okay. Now, if I'm demonstrating how to draw from a holster, when I draw from a holster, I immediately go back into the weaver. And I think it's because that's my natural like defensive stance. And I don't go clear back into the full weaver. It's kind of an offset weaver. And you'll kind of learn all that. But your basic, dog's making a bunch of noise in here. I apologize about that. But your two basic stance. You have your isosceles and you have your weaver stance. And that is the stance. That's a good place to start. And as you start doing stuff like doing more shooting and moving, you can kind of go ahead and adjust those as you go. But this is a fine place to start. This is where I start all my beginning students at. If someone were to come to me and say, hey, look, I've shot a little, but not very much, or I've never shot at all, this is exactly where I would start them. And we would progress and change as we needed to. So there you go. I hope it helped.